You didn't phone me.
Then I was about 14 because of his age.
People in the confusion. Quick. They're just old. Yeah, I like that. Thank you for coming from far and wide and not so far, and some just rolled out of bed. As you know, we are here to celebrate the life of Mark Keith Miller, Peter's dad, and it was a long struggle for him towards the end. But I want to thank every one of you for coming. It's an overwhelming response, and obviously a very sad day, but I think we should celebrate for Keith and have a nice day and a smiley day and a laughing day. That's what Keith would have wanted. So as you can see, your program is not too involved. I don't think we can even get you guys singing, which is a shame. It says song, but I don't think you have to sing unless you want to sing along. So the welcome is by me, Joe Ferreira. The messages are by me, Joe Ferreira. And I was nowhere in this organization planning when it all happened and I got the order of service. And I'm like, do you know how busy I am today? Anyway, it's been a pleasure. Leeds, Lynn, all you family for coming. So our messages come from all over. Ali Cameron. I will always have fond memories of Keith from playing Fushu with him and Neville and his dad at the GNP, to having fun weekends at Dutchman's Pool in the Caravan Park, pulling each other's leg and playing dice at the golf club. good times. This is how I will remember him, for the fun and laughter he brought into my life. He was one of the good guys. I'll miss him. Heather Sinclair, sorry I can't be there. I have such fond memories of Keith and Leonie, sending lots of love. Sarah Thiessen, I really liked your dad. He was one of the old Kwekwe pillars. My first job was working for him at GAD Motors. What a lovely boss. May he rest in peace. Roy Grant, Keith will be sadly missed, a true friend who always put a smile on my face. A great and wonderful man. Dirk Bernardi, Keith was a special, down-to-earth, salt of the earth, always the same, good man. May he rest in peace. Sending lots of love to you, Vida. Kim Slachter, your dad was an amazing man, love to all the family. Kelly, sending lots of love, thinking of you all. Debbie, Carl, Brands, Lila and Abby, dearest Beats and Ken, so sorry for the loss of your popsy. It was an honor to know him, and the world's a better place, was a better place with him in it. Sending you much love and strength. Lorna, Alex and the girls, so sorry to hear your sad news. We send all our love and are thinking of you. Your dad is at peace now. Ronnie Hewitt, heartfelt sympathies. Keith walked to the beat of his own drum, but such a gentleman. God spared him so he could grow old with the two people he adored. Rest in peace. Lauren Serfontaine, sending lots of love. I have so many special memories of your dad at Dutchman's Boom. Here's that name again. He was such an amazing man, both of your folks were, and I'm lucky to have spent so much time around him growing up. A huge loss for you, but a happy reunion for them. Thinking of you. Rosie Chappell, so sorry to hear about Keith. He was a very special man. Resting now, lots of love. Anne Ashford, what a wonderful man. Just loved him. He is at peace now with his Leonie. Love to you all. Brendan Tucker, thinking of you. What an incredible man. We were so lucky to have had him in our lives. Sending love. Peter and Shelley, our dearest friend, Keefe. Our hearts are sore, but we treasure all the good times that we had together playing sport, telling stories at Briar's, drinking chibulis, and telling jokes. You and Leonie were so special to us, and we were grateful to have the chance to chat with you with you a few weeks ago. Dearest deep sympathy to Vida, Ken, and all the family. Fly now, you are reunited with your beloved Leonie. Forever, Peter and Shelley. And that ends the messages, and then we have a small reading from Shenks.
Morning, everyone. I kind of just picked this poem. It's from a fond memory that I had the day probably about 3 or 4 years ago, with Uncle Keith and Uncle Charlie Marsh. And we were picked, Vida and myself, to go fishing with them at Dutchman's. Anyway, it was a really, really lovely day. The biggest part of the big jokes and the laughter that we had was most of the day. Vida and I had our butts in the air, bending over, pulling up the motors, and cutting all the clady nets that had, gone all around from those fishermen. And of course, Uncle Charlie and Uncle Keith were, having a few little swear words and, about why the nets were there. Anyway, this is his poem for our dear Uncle Keithy, and I always used to tease him that he always looked like, reminded me of Clark Gable, and especially when we were cutting his hair he said he always used to have his hair just so for all the women. Anyway. Right. I finished life's chores assigned to me, so put me on a boat headed out to sea. Please send along my fishing pole, for I have been invited to the fishing hole, where every day is a day to fish, to fill your heart with every wish. Don't worry or feel sad for me. I'm fishing with the master of the sea. We will miss each other for a while, but you will come and bring your smile. That won't be long, you will see, till we're together, you and me. Be happy as I go out to sea. To all of those that think of me, Hey, and if others wonder why I'm missing, just tell them I've gone fishing.
Thank you, Shings. And the next is a reading by Lynn. Thank you, Lynn.
It's the same place as coming up time and time again.
That's one, yes.
Good morning, everybody. Peter, who I'm sure you all know is my cousin, aka my sister, asked me to do a reading for the occasion for a celebration of Keith's life. I searched for a while to find something special because I didn't want to do just a reading, but something that was meaningful to us and hopefully relative to the Keith that I remembered as I knew him. I hope that what I've put together has achieved this because Mark Keith Miller, otherwise known as Keithy, in his latter years to our family was such a special parent to me and part of a small, very close, very proud family. Among many, many other conventional lessons that he tried to teach Bedo, I got most of them, Keith definitely taught us how to play darts, how to play dice, and most importantly, how to catch a fish. If I had to start telling stories of our childhood and even our adult life that we had together with Malcolm, Bedo, Keith, and Leonie, we'd all be here for a very long time. But I'm not here for that. So I thought I should try to limit it to one very well-known, very special story that Tyler reminded me of and that my children always loved to hear. One Sunday morning, Bedo wasn't more than 8 or 9, and I see that Angus Bissett's here. I'm sure he was part of the story. Keith and his best friend, Gussie Boy Bissett, decided that the fish were calling and that they should head out to Dutchman's Pool with the boat and the kids to try their luck. They packed up, told their wives not to worry, that they had everything under control. They'd be back early, which of course nobody believed for a second, with fish for dinner and set off with all the children in the back of the pickup. One short stop was required at the local bakery to buy something like ice, or I don't know what it was. Once that job was done, they decided that the coal box might be a little light on contents. So they popped up to the Globe and Phoenix Club to pick up a few extra jaboulis and coats for the kids. On parking there, the men told the children to jump in the back of the boat, tackle up and wait for them and that they wouldn't be long. Hats on heads, because it was nothing like sunscreen in those days. The children jumped into the boat and sorted out all their rods and reels, and they checked the reels were working, and fishing in the car park, everything was going well. Eventually somebody got hot, and no fathers had reappeared. The waiter, so somebody got hot, and no fathers appeared, and I think Bedo was the youngest, so she got sent into the club to go and get refreshments. The waiter Julie arrived with drinks and crisps and a message that the dads wouldn't be long. Play commenced and continued for some more hours, and some more after that. Albeit with a couple more rounds of drinks, a chocolate or two to keep everybody quiet, and still no fathers appeared. Eventually, as the sun was setting, out strolled, I'm being polite, Keith and Gus. Many rounds of snooker and fushu later, to find all the children present and accounted for, they hadn't checked on them once, rather sunburned, but otherwise delighted to have been able to spend the day playing outside in the car park at the club and to have been together. A short lecture was given, whereby if any one of the children told their mothers that they hadn't quite made it to the fishing spot, it would be the last time that they ever got invited fishing. Needless to say, that story was only shared many years later when Bedo was safely old enough to go on her own fishing trip, so she couldn't get left behind. And that's just one of the many stories of how life actually was in those days and how Keith approached life. That was just who he was. That leads me to a short poem that I've had for a while, and it just kind of reminded me of him, and it's entitled, How Did He Live? Not how did he die, but how did he live? Not what did he gain, but what did he give? These are the units to measure the worth of a man, regardless of birth. Not what was his church, nor what was his creed, but had he befriended those really in need? Was he ever ready with a word of good cheer or a cold beer? To bring back a smile, to banish a tear. Not what did the piece in the newspaper say, but how many were sad and so sorry when he passed away. And then I'd like to close with a scripture It's a well-known one for us all. And I just believe that even in the last discussions that I had with Keith, it sort of puts everything into perspective when you're feeling a bit sad. It comes from Ecclesiastes 3, verses 3 to 14. A time for everything. There's a time for everything, and a season for every activity under the heavens. A time to be born, and a time to die. A time to plant, and a time to uproot. A time to kill, and a time to heal. A time to tear down, and a time to build. There's a time to weep, and a time to laugh. A time to mourn, and a time to dance. A time to scatter stones, and a time to gather them. A time to embrace, and a time to refrain from embracing. There's a time to search, and a time to give up. A time to keep, and a time to throw away. A time to tear, and a time to mend. A time to be silent, and a time to speak up. A time to love, and a time to hate. A time for war, and a time for peace. What do workers gain from their toil? I've seen the burden God has laid on the human race. He has made everything beautiful in its time. He has also set eternity in the human heart. Yet no one can fathom what God has done from beginning to end. I know that there is nothing better for people than to be happy and to do good while they live, that each of them may eat and drink and find satisfaction in all their toil. This is the gift of God. I know that everything God does will endure forever. Nothing can be added to it, and nothing can be taken. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. It's me again. There's a message from the family, and all this paperwork, I have it. So, from the family being Gareth, Joey Maudsley, and daughter Sam. So Gareth first, when I think of Uncle Keith, the following scenes come to mind. Him working in his garage in Masasa Park. It was always a great place to explore. When I was a kid, there's so many areas to go into, and he had so many old tools and machines that I was always interested in. Especially the pit that he used to do oil changes. It always seemed so exciting when I was smaller. His boat motors hanging in a drum of water whilst he worked on them. He was always busy outside repairing something with a beer nearby. Always when we went to the caravan park on weekends, that's got to be Dutchman's, you would always see him and Auntie Lee fishing or going out in their boat or raft. He always seemed to come back with fish, with Auntie Lee telling him what to do from the front of the boat. He would turn the motor revs up higher to drown out her front row seat. I also remember going with him and enjoying my fishing with him. Dutchman's Pools was a place he enjoyed going to and was always out fishing and enjoying the river. When my father died, Uncle Keith became like a father figure to me. We spent a lot of time together. I would visit him and Auntie Lee regularly for a chat or a bride. My mother, Joey, always made sure we went over to see them, and she continued that tradition right until the end. He also used to come round to our house and watch the rugby quite often, and he reminded me of my granddad, his father, Mark Miller, who always shouted at the TV during the game, turning the ref off for the way he was refereeing. He was always fun to be around and always seemed happy with life. I'm happy that he was able to come and visit me and my family in the UK with Ken, and that he met my children, who also talked about him often. He will be missed, of course, and he will always be in my memories and thoughts. The second one from Joey, that's Keith's sister. Keith was 10 years older than me. Being the youngest and a girl, I was quite spoiled, and much to my brother's annoyance, they were often left to babysit me. Various attempts were made to try and get rid of me, like pushing me down a hill onto a busy road in my pram. Years later, I remember being a bridesmaid when Keith and Lee were married. As time went by, Keith and I became close and often kept in touch and visited each other. We kept in touch via phone calls, and I was able to visit Kwekwe from the UK to spend time with Keith and Lee. I had the pleasure of using his outside shower, which stirred up so much laughter between the three of us. A highlight of our time together was when he was able to come and visit me in the UK, and we went to see our mother's birth home in Essex. After I'd managed to contact the current owners, we organised a trip to see and visit our family history. We walked through the vineyards and garden, also seeing the preserved stables and cow sheds. For Keith and I, it was amazing to share the emotion in seeing the home our mother had described. When he moved in to live with Peter and Ken, I was able to keep in contact with him on the phone, chatting, and on FaceTime. He was always upbeat and positive, expressing his gratitude to Ken and Peter for opening their home to him and caring for him in every way. He loved living with them, and I knew they loved having him. I'm going to miss those calls to him. I was very fortunate to spend a week with Keith just before he passed away. That was a very special time for me. I realized how popular he was with everyone. Everyone has a soft spot for Keith. We shared a few memories during our chats together, and I'll always be grateful to Peter and Ken for caring for my brother and making it possible for me to spend time with him. From Sam. Uncle Keith was a lovely man with a kind and gentle nature. He was very similar in temperament to his father Mark, my grandfather, who I loved dearly. When I was a teenager, Uncle Keith loved to tease me. We laughed a lot and he showed me lots of love and affection. I remember weekends at Sabakri Caravan Park, Dutchman's Pool, and booze cruises on his raft. Uncle Keith was very innovative and organized a toilet on board the raft. He enclosed a small corner of the raft for privacy. However, the screens were not full height, and I have a memory of him using the facility, standing up and looking around, bottom half covered, top half in full view. Another very special memory I have is when I brought my two little boys to meet Uncle Keith and Auntie Lee. They were so happy for me and showered my little family with so much love. Uncle Keith and Ken came to visit our family in the UK in 2017. By then my boys were 15 and 18, and again he showed a real interest in them and formed a close bond. I was blessed to see Uncle Keith again in the weeks before he passed away. That will be a comforting and lasting memory for me. To be able to give him a hug and a kiss and see his smile was a great privilege for me. I know too that Uncle Keith was greatly loved and respected by Wenceslas, Tracy and Christine. All of them in their own way showed him care and compassion. I want to thank them for all they did for him. From all of us, as a closing note, although we are not there physically, our thoughts are with you all today. Thank you to all those who have come and attended this memorial and supported Peter and Ken from the family. And next we have is the eulogy from Ken.
Thanks, Joe, and welcome everyone. A lot of what I have, you've heard certain names and places. They seem to come up quite regularly, and they will do so again. Apologies in advance. Mark Keith Miller was born to Mark and Doris Miller on the 29th of May 1935 in Dola, Northern Rhodesia. He had two younger siblings, Neville and Joey. When Keith was young, the family relocated to southern Rhodesia, predominantly to the Kwekwe area where his father Mark worked on several mines. At times the areas were so remote that a governess from England was employed to homeschool the children. Some of the mines' names, and I know some of you will be interested, were Python, Surprise, Hornet, Rivoli, Leopard, Birthday Luck and Piper Moss. Doris Miller was an extraordinary English lady who travelled to all these mines with her husband, often living in mud huts. They also had their fair share of disasters, with no less than 2 houses burning down and several fingers lost in an accident involving a circular saw. It was with Granddad Mark. Eventually the family settled in Kwekwe, moving into a house in Ashdale, now Mosasa Park, and Mark, by this time known as Keith, and Neville went to boarding school at Genifa. After school, Keith found employment at Midrow Press, where he completed an apprenticeship as a typesetter and ultimately became newsroom manager, running the print machines and getting out our beloved Observer every Friday morning. Being a keen sportsman, Keith joined the club, and in the mid-1950s he had some great stories of early Kwekwe Sports Club. One involved a fierce rivalry between rugby and football, and the two team captains. According to Keith, when winter was coming up, Norman Whitworth of the football team and Ernie Heppel of the rugby team would go about town recruiting players for the season. Once Keith gave his word to one or the other, that was the sport he played that season. It was considered ungentlemanly to renege on your word. Over the years, Keith played both sports, but which one was dependent on who reached him first to get his signature. Keith was not a cricketer, so in the summer he played baseball with the Bradley brothers, Ivor Matthews, Sharks Nielsen, and his own brother-in-law, Robbie Maudsley. In the 70s and 80s, there was a hockey league with matches being played under floodlights out on these fields on Tuesdays and Thursday evenings. One of the teams included two fearsome backs who did not strictly conform to the accepted rules of the game. They were not informed that hockey is actually a non-contact sport. And to these two gentlemen, they were not wielding a hockey stick, they were holding a weapon. And many ankles and knees learnt that the hard way. Of course, this was the lethal combo of Keith Miller and Gus Bissett. This duo were to make their mark in other areas in years to come. Whilst enjoying the many activities at the club, Keith met a lovely young lady from the softball team. Her name was Leonie Erasmus. After a fairly lengthy charm offensive, she accepted his marriage proposal. They married in 1960, and a daughter, Bida, was born in 1966. Sorry, that's 70s.
Too late.
Good save. The 70s was moving time for the Millers. Keith purchased a brand new car, which was a bright red Zephyr. This vehicle was so conspicuous that everybody in town knew exactly where Keith Miller was at all times. He also bought a brand new house in Masasa Park, right next door to the Johnson family. A very close relationship developed between the two families, which lasted decades and actually continues to this day. In the 80s and 90s, overly strenuous field sport had come to an end, and Keith and Leonie bought a caravan and travelled, usually with the Bissets, to rallies within Zimbabwe and frequently to Kenton-on-Sea in South Africa. Upon hearing of a 3-week holiday, the kids excitedly assumed that they had 3 weeks on the beach. But it didn't quite work out that way. For Keith and Gus, it was all about the journey and stopping at many caravan parks along the way. So it took a week to get there, a week to get back, and there was a week in the middle for the kids. Ultimately, Keith and Leonie's caravan was parked permanently at Dutchman's Pool, there's that name again, where every weekend they would visit the Bissets. In time, this grew into a mini community when the Ashfords, Hoffmans and the Maudsleys all acquired caravans and did the same. Keith and Gus were very involved in the committee there, the building of the bar, etc., and the general development of the park. At the same time, they became known as the Clowns of Dutchman's. If there was something going on, they were right in the middle of it. Keith also loved the outdoors and was regularly out at various rivers and lakes with his fishing partner, Charlie Mouse. After 30 years at Midrand, Keith worked at just about everywhere in town. A few IPF, GAD Motors, National Tyre Services, Morrison Brothers, and finally Dusty, working for Peter and Lynn up until his retirement. Keith and Leonie moved into Lynbrook in 2005. They enjoyed their time there with their private garden shared with their neighbours and friends, Peter and Ethne Hageman. About this time, Mark, who had become Keith, became affectionately known by family and close friends as Keefy. You've heard that come up before. So whilst at Lynbrook, Keith experienced his first what we call a Keefy misadventure. Late one Sunday morning, Bida and I receive a frantic phone call from her mother, and Bida says, "What's wrong?" And Leonie says, "I've lost Keefy." So we pop over to see her. We soon establish that early that morning, Keith with his friend Lionel Sears, some of you will remember, they'd gone out to pick wild mushrooms. "We'll only be gone an hour," they said. It was now approaching midday. The only useful piece of information we got was they were going on the old Gorkwe Road, or the new Gorkwe Road, So off we go, Peter and I are driving aimlessly. There's lots of tracks and roads that go off that road. So after a couple of hours of driving around, we get a phone call from Peter's mom. She says he's home. But interestingly, Lionel isn't, and nor's the truck. So we get back to Lynbrook, and there's Keefe looking, he's already, I think his ear's hot by the time we get there. And we take him and we go out on the Goku Road, and after a little while he recognizes the road he went down. And the story unfolds that they got to the spot, and with their OK Bazaar's plastic bags to go and put the mushrooms in, one goes north, one goes south, and they couldn't find the truck afterwards. They wandered around. After 3 hours, Keefe found the main road and hitchhiked. Some kind gentleman took him all the way back to Lynbrook Homes. There were no mushrooms for dinner that night. Bean and I enjoyed many holidays with Keefe and Leonie, houseboats on Kariba, Springbok rugby games, Ballito by the sea, and one memorable trip to Mauritius. This was the scene of yet another Keefe adventure. Bino was trying to get him to learn to snorkel in the swimming pool of the hotel. It didn't go well. And then one day we went out on the boat onto the ocean, and he decided, right, he'll give it a go. And Peter Hewlett was actually with us, Peter and Shelley. And we were all snorkeling around the reefs. And of course Keefe gets in, and he just couldn't get it right. And he kept on going deep, and the water would come down the pipe. And so he gave up in disgust and attacked the cooler box, which was in the boat. So we went all the way up to Grand Bay, which took some time, and we found a bar there. So Keefe's into the motion now. He's enjoying the day. Some hours later, we're going back, and it takes quite a long time to get back to the hotel. Leonie is now frantic again, much like the mushroom incident. We get there just before dark, and his ear gets hot once again. We all shower up and go to dinner. So now we're at dinner, everyone else except Keefe. And about 20 minutes, half an hour later, he comes in, and we sat at the same table every single day, breakfast, lunch, and supper. But he couldn't find us. So he sits 3 or 4 tables away. And after some time wandering around, but never spotting us, he goes into this incredible display of food. I mean, these big hotels that Mauritius are. And he goes and gets himself a tiny little plate and puts it in front of me. Eventually, Bito feels sorry for him and goes over and says, come and join us, come and sit down. And Leonie's cooling off now. So he's got a tiny little plate with some chips on it. So Bito says, Dad, we paid for the whole package. And the food's included, and there's all the delights of the Indian Ocean can offer, and everything else, and fruit and veg, it's everything. And she said, Dad, go and get what you want. And he just looked up and he said, but I like chips. Most recently, Keefe, and you've heard it earlier, we had the opportunity to travel together to England to visit Joey and family. We also got the chance to see my family in Scotland, who embraced him like one of their own. Approximately 2 years ago, Keefe's health began to fail, and he came to live with Bida and I. We thank everyone who came to visit over this time. Blessedly, his sister Joey and her daughter Samantha arrived 2 weeks before he passed. Bida and I have been married 34 years, so I guess I've known Keefe in a close personal capacity for almost 40. I never once saw him agitated or heard a raised voice. He was possessed of an even disposition and was liked and loved by all. I am very proud to have been Keefe's son-in-law, and very grateful he was my friend. Thank you.
Thanks, Ken. We have a reading after that by Nisha Layton.
Hi everybody. So just one story before I read my poem. Also about Dutchman's Pool. So I was the child that did not like fishing. I thought it was the worst, most boring thing ever. So when we were young, we used to go to the caravan park and I used to hate it. And Uncle Keith and Uncle Gus used to say, come on, we'll take you on the pontoon and we'll show you around. And I was like, I don't want to. I don't like it. So after about a year of my complaints, Uncle Keith built me a backpack course at Dutchman's to entertain me whilst the rest of them went fishing. And he always tried to say, if you try it, you might enjoy it, but it was not my thing. One other story, a few years ago, we went Christmas time to Kariba. We decided to have a girls' fishing trip. So all of us girls get onto the little pontoon thing and Uncle Keith jumps on. So everyone's looking and thinking, it's a girls' trip, but yeah, he's part of the girls, so off we go. Christmas Day, they fishing, I'm in charge of the cool box, handing out the drinks because I don't fish. Peter catches nice big fish, reels it in, unhooks it, she kisses it and says, Merry Christmas, and throws it back into the water. Uncle Keith nearly had a heart attack. What is she doing? So I said, okay, maybe that's just the first one because it's Christmas Day. Anyway, she put about 5 more and did the exact same thing. And he was like, can you please do something about my daughter? Eventually she had to explain, Dad, it's Christmas Day. So we catch in the fish, but it's catch and release day. No, he didn't like that answer. He couldn't understand it. But that was how he is. And he always loved being out on the water fishing. If it wasn't for him, we would have not had fishing trips on our houseboat trips. Because the rest didn't catch anything. He will be very, very sadly missed by me. So this is just a poem that
If tears could build a stairway and memories a lane, we would walk right up to heaven and bring you home again. No farewell words were spoken, no time to say goodbye. You were gone before we knew it, and only God knows why. Our hearts still ache in sadness, and secret tears still flow. What it meant to lose you, no one will ever know. But now we know you want us to mourn for you no more, to remember all the happy times. Life still has much in store. Since you'll never be forgotten, we pledge to you today, a hallowed place within our hearts is where you'll always stay.
Thanks, Richard. Nish. Tough one, Abigail. Sorry. Finally, on to everybody who got involved, either with Keith's last year or few months, and everybody involved today. Ken has got some thank yous to read out.
Right, this is the last one, and all of these thank yous are on behalf of Peter. Thank you to Quickly Sports Club, in particular Nisha, for all the work she's put in to today. It's Nish. Thanks to the Bowls Club and their committee for allowing us to use this facility and all the hard work done to make it ready. Brian, for being Dad's chauffeur on his final journey. A tremendous responsibility, thank you so much. Storm for the beautiful flowers and the arrangement. Joey, Samantha and Gareth for the flowers that they provided. Tish for all the photos. Alan for the video. Thank you for taking the time today to come and bid farewell to my dad. He would like to buy you all a drink shortly. A few special thank yous. Nisha, you became a part of the furniture at 58. Keefe loved your company and your stories and always looked forward to your visits. He knows every golf game you ever played. Between you and Shah, there's always a steady, ready supply of his favorite foods. Shings, Charlene as Keefe called you. There are not enough words to thank you for all that you did for him. A haircut was strictly a Charlene job. I cannot list everything you did. It would go on forever. But I can tell you that I am eternally grateful. I am truly blessed to have friends like these two girls who have given me and Ken and my dad so much love and support. Thank you, Bea. Well said. Right, to finish with, we're just going to have a song. Keith Miller wasn't a slow-moving kind of guy on the dance floor. He was more a sort of like get it going a bit. So we're just going to play a song, and we'll play half of it or so, and then if you'd all be kind enough to come and join us for a drink and remember Keefe. Thank you all for coming.
Sorry, there's also teas and stuff outside, teas and snacks, and we'll obviously see you here like Ken said.
haven't got enough hands.
Why did you get it right?